This video is part 2 of a Q&A video in which I am answering questions that you have asked me. If you haven't watched the first part, I will link it in the top link in the description. Otherwise, grab a snack and let's get to the rest of your questions. Secret Identity also asks, what are my top 2 tips for getting fretting accuracy at relatively high speeds for things like selective picking and legato? Well, as always with any new technique, you're going to want to go slow, work on getting fluid motion, and having no tension in any part of your body that doesn't need to be there. As you get that feeling, you can start to increase the speed, and those individual movements are going to start to combine into larger movements. So rather than going hammer, 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 it'll feel like one fluid motion of 3 hammers. Same with legato. In the beginning, you're going to need to work on your individual hammer-ons from finger to finger, every combination, and then after a while, it'll feel like one fluid motion, no matter which way you're going. Another tip I have is to use a very dry tone in a real amplifier, because that is going to give you pretty immediate feedback of the notes you're missing, notes that you're not hitting hard enough, notes that you're pulling off and sound bad. There's no hiding behind reverb or effects in that situation, so that's going to really make you up your game quickly when you're practicing these techniques. Alright, our next question comes from @Casey7777. I'm getting into looping on 8-string, ripping Rob Scallon again. Any tips? I don't think looping on the 8-string is necessarily different from looping on a 6-string, except that we have a bass guitar combined with our guitar. So when you're looping, you're going to want to think of as many different possible sounds and timbres that you possibly can on the guitar. We are afforded a lot. Our low strings, middle strings, and our high strings all kind of give different textures and different overtones and can sound like different instruments. For example, the bass string is obviously going to be kind of like a bass guitar where we can play some roots. Our middle strings are going to be really good for playing chords. Right, they're going to have a really nice kind of middle of the row, like a piano playing accompaniment for something. And then our high strings, of course, we can do really crunchy things or lead or harmonies and stuff like that. So when you're looping, you have the time to play each of these parts individually and create a wide sonic range with your instrument. Now, when you're creating drums, you can also do that on the guitar. We have kind of a kick drum sound if you can get a low thuddy sound out of your bass strings, or just by tapping the strings somewhere. You can experiment with where it sounds good. You can create nice snare sounds by hitting the strings with a pick. If sometimes these strings up here will ring out, and that can create some cool textural effects. So really just get to know your guitar and every possible sound you can make on it. Try using different implements like little metal rods. You can use little rubber balls and stuff like that to have different effects. Really, it's up to your imagination. So create lots of different ideas, and then each of those is going to contribute to your overall orchestration of your loop. One other thing, try to keep your effects chain pretty clean. If you even have a little bit of reverb and that is being stuck into your loop, it's going to really add up a lot and muddy up your sound. So keep your reverb and stuff after your effects chain and keep them generally pretty light. @Casey also asks, I don't know how to evaluate gear demos for 8-strings. For 6-string demos, they often play physical amp-based archetypes like Fender, Vox, Marshall amps, etc. But I've watched a dozen Andrew Bena videos, and all the guitars sound like Neural DSP Gojira. Do you just buy for ergonomics and playability and fix your tone in your DAW after, or are you able to buy for tone in a way I don't understand yet? So a bit of a long question, but essentially it boils down to all the reviews for 8-strings just kind of sound like Neural DSP's Gojira. Everybody's just chugging and doing heavy distorted tones, and we're not really hearing the guitar. I think this is a failure on the part of the reviewer. They should be playing their instrument that they're reviewing in a way that reveals the characteristics of the instrument. So no, I don't think it's a fault of you for not being able to hear it. I do think the demos are kind of bad in general. Everyone just wants to hear those low chug notes, and those get views. So you're not really going to be getting honest feedback for the guitar itself. And it's also good to keep in mind that these people are often sent guitars by companies so the companies can get some exposure. Now, these people usually aren't forced to say nice things about the company. There's no contract of you have to say something good, although sometimes there is. But in order to keep a good relationship with that company and to be sent more free stuff in the future, they will probably lean toward a more favorable review, not really giving you the information you need to make an informed purchase. So unfortunately, unless there is a review channel out there that I don't know about that goes over 8-string guitars specifically in depth, you're probably going to have to try the guitars out for yourself or do some research on your own. At Dessert asks, how do you play an 8-string with a bassist? Because the frequencies are the same. Well, some of the frequencies are the same, but remember, you don't only have a low F sharp or low E string and a low B string. You have 8 strings where you can go up into the middle range and high string, or high range. Just because we have these low notes doesn't mean you have to play them all the time. Let the bassist play in the bass range. If you are chugging and doing gent, which a lot of you are, then in that case, if you can get a 5-string bass player, that's pretty ideal. This is something that like Meshuggah does and other metal bands. That extra low end on the bass kind of balances out with the 8-string guitar. The other thing to note though with a bass is that while some of the frequencies are the same, the timbre of the two instruments are not the same. And this also means that the overtones and kind of the strength of the different overtones are going to be different as well. So when you're playing with a bass, even if you're playing the same notes, you're going to have 2 distinct sounds. We're going to be able to tell one of them is a bass and one of them is a guitar, and you're not going to overlap as much as you think. Imagine a cello playing a note in the middle of their range and a viola playing a note a little bit lower in their range at the same time. They don't all of a sudden cancel each other out or create this awful sound, it simply thickens the texture. And that's what's going to happen with your 8-string and a bass. So don't be afraid, give it a shot, it should sound pretty cool. At the Metal Climber asks, hi Thomas, I found Ben Monder's song In Memoriam from your video and I'm planning to perform it for my recital a year from now. Sweet. How slow did you take that part that starts with the F sharp stacked fifths? Because I feel like I'm practicing it as slow as possible, but it might not be enough. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Ben Monder is probably my favorite guitar player, and he does so much stuff with harmony on the guitar that it's sometimes hard to keep up. His hands are also huge, which makes it easier for him sometimes to play these shapes, but these things can be practiced. And if you don't know the song very well and you don't know what he's talking about, it has these chords in a sequence. Huge stretches on some of those, some really weird movements between them. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. So how slow did I go? Very slow. In the beginning, each of the chords took a little bit of time just to get my hands wrapped around, and I wouldn't even put them in a sequence. Once you kind of get used to them, then you can start chunking them 2 chords at a time. Right, so we have that progression. So just do that back and forth. Probably be slower than that. And then once you get here, you can kind of add the next chord, and so on and so forth. So really, you're not trying to play the whole section really slow. You are taking different chunks and working them longer and faster, and kind of, you know, you're not going to linearly learn the whole section. You kind of have to learn this section, and then this part, and then this part, and then you put it all together. So that's going to be the process whenever you learn chords, really, especially if those chords are new and hard for your hands to grip. At Octoham asks, do you have some off guitar exercises for keeping those fingers nice and snappy? Well, I've never really done exercise for the left hand, even though that's probably what you're talking about, keeping those fingers snappy, but I have done right hand finger picking exercises. These I always felt did something a little bit. You know, I've tried a few things with the left hand, but they never felt that useful. But with the right hand, you can actually do finger picking exercises on your leg. So I'll just pretend this is my leg, and if I'm sitting on the train or the bus or something, you can just do your patterns that you're working on, and you have that feedback of like something physical resisting your finger movement. It's going to force your fingers into kind of that like soft fingertip, good technique, and it's pretty discreet. You can do it in public, doesn't really matter. People will just probably think you're a guitar player. So right hand stuff you can do. In terms of some actual left hand stuff, maybe there's that exercise where you can practice lifting your fingers. So if here's my surface, you know, you can practice lifting your fingers up independently of each other. It's something piano players do quite a bit because it more applies to their technique, but I think it applies to us as well because we do have to take our fingers off of the neck. More than finger exercises off of the guitar, I think just general hand and wrist health is pretty important to think about. You know, if you want your fingers to work better, the most efficient way to do it is going to be to practice more. But practicing too much can lead to injury. So being aware of how your forearm is doing, how your extensor muscles are doing, how your fingers are feeling, all the tendons, all of that is going to be very valuable. So make sure you keep, everything massaged nicely. Maybe sometimes you need to stretch the forearms, keep them from getting too tight. And I also recommend doing some sort of exercise to work your extensor muscles, because as guitar players, we're always squeezing our hands. These muscles get overworked, can tighten the elbow, give us some tendonitis down here. So work on some sort of exercise. You can even just have an elastic band around your fingers and open it up a bunch of times. And that will work the muscles on the top of your arm to counteract the overly worked muscles on the bottom. Keep everything in balance, keep your wrist and tendons healthy. Okay, so that about does it for today. Hopefully some of those questions were interesting and the answers were interesting as well, just to give you my thoughts on them. These are things I really love talking about with my students, so if you are looking for lessons, I do offer private teaching. You can check out the link in the description below and reach out if you have any questions about it. So until the next one, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and wherever you are in the world, as always, happy practicing.